Irrefutable proof that Jesus never existed. Welcome to Logic Before Faith. For more than 2,000 years, billions of people have believed in the story of a man named Jesus Christ. According to tradition, he lived in the first century, performed miracles, healed the sick, walked on water, turned water into wine, challenged religious authorities, was executed by the Roman state, and then rose from the dead. This story has shaped civilizations. It has built empires. It has justified wars, laws, obedience, morality, guilt, salvation, and fear. But influence does not equal truth. Popularity does not equal reality. The real question is not how powerful the story is. The real question is much simpler and far more uncomfortable. Did Jesus actually exist as a historical person? Or was he a myth, constructed, edited, and expanded over time? In this video, we are not attacking belief. We are not mocking faith. We are not telling anyone what to believe. We are doing something far more dangerous. We are examining evidence. Stripping away faith. Faith asks you to trust. History asks you to verify. When we remove faith, tradition, and emotional attachment, and apply the same historical standards we use for any other ancient figure, the story of Jesus begins to collapse very quickly. Sometimes the strongest proof is not what exists. Sometimes it is what does not. Let's begin where all historical investigations must begin, with contemporary evidence. The silence of contemporary history. Jesus is said to have lived during the Roman Empire. This is important because the Roman Empire was not illiterate. It was not primitive. It was not disorganized. It was one of the most bureaucratic and documented civilizations in ancient history. Romans recorded executions, trials, rebellions, political unrest, religious movements, public disturbances. Crucifixion was not a private punishment. It was a public spectacle designed to intimidate and control. Now consider the claims. Jesus supposedly drew massive crowds, threatened religious authority, challenged Roman stability, performed public miracles, was executed publicly. If even a fraction of this were true, it would have been documented. Yet when we examine Roman historical records from the first century, there is nothing. No trial record, no execution report, no mention of miracles, no mention of darkness covering the land, no mention of the dead rising, nothing. This is not a small omission. This is a historical void. Roman historians in total silence. Let's be specific. Roman writers from this period include Seneca, Pliny, the elder Quintilian Martial. They documented minor political disturbances, failed prophets, local unrest, strange omens, if a Jewish preacher was, drawing thousands of followers, performing public miracles, threatening Roman order. It would have been extraordinary, and extraordinary events were precisely what Roman historians loved to record. Yet again, no mention, not even criticism, not even dismissal, not even ridicule, just silence, and silence in history is loud. Jewish sources, also nothing. Perhaps Romans ignored him, so let's ask a more obvious question. What about Jewish historians? Jesus supposedly lived in Judea. He supposedly challenged Jewish religious leaders. He supposedly caused major religious disruption. Surely Jewish scholars would have noticed. Yet once again, nothing. No contemporary Jewish writings describe his miracles, his teachings, his execution. This absence becomes even more troubling when we examine Flavius Josephus. The Josephus forgery. Josephus was the most important Jewish historian of the first century. He wrote extensively about Jewish history, political unrest, religious movements. His writings cover the exact time and place where Jesus supposedly lived. Yet Josephus makes no genuine mention of Jesus. There is only one short paragraph, the Testimonium Flavianum. But almost all modern scholars agree. It was added later. It contradicts Josephus's beliefs. Early Christian writers never quoted it. The language is overtly Christian. In other words, it is a forgery, inserted centuries later to fix a historical problem. And that problem is simple. There was no original evidence. The Gospels are not history. The Gospels are often presented as proof, but they fail every historical standard. They are anonymous, written decades later, contradictory, theologically motivated. They were not written by eyewitnesses. They were written after belief already existed. That is not history. That is mythology development. Real historical figures leave traces before belief spreads. Here, belief spreads first, and documentation follows later. That is backwards. Contradictions and evolution. When historians examine ancient texts, consistency matters. If multiple sources describe the same real events, we expect core details to align. But the gospel accounts of Jesus do not meet this standard. The genealogies in Matthew and Luke contradict each other completely. They trace different family lines with different names and generations. Both cannot be historically accurate. The birth narratives conflict as well. Matthew places Jesus' birth during the reign of King Herod. Luke places it during a Roman census under Quirinius, an event that occurred years later. These timelines do not overlap. The resurrection accounts are even more inconsistent. Who visits the tomb changes, who is present changes, what is said changes, where Jesus appears changes. These are not minor differences. They concern the central event of Christianity. This pattern is well known to historians. Early stories are simple. Later stories become more detailed and theological. That is not how eyewitness history behaves. That is how myths evolve over time. Pagan parallels. Christianity did not emerge in isolation. Long before Jesus, the ancient world already believed in dying and rising gods, divine sons, virgin or supernatural births, salvation through sacrifice. These themes existed across many cultures. This does not mean Christianity copied one religion directly. It means it developed inside an existing mythological environment. Religious movements succeed by using familiar ideas. They adapt symbols people already understand. Christianity fit naturally into a world already accustomed to savior myths. This is cultural evolution, not divine uniqueness. If Christianity were a singular revelation, we would expect originality and clear historical grounding. Instead, we see continuity with earlier belief systems. Continuity is human. Revelation would be different. Why myths feel real? A common question is, if it isn't true, why does it feel so real? Psychology explains this clearly. Belief spreads through authority repetition, fear, identity, community. When belief dominates a culture, questioning it becomes dangerous. History shows this repeatedly. Doubt is punished. Conformity is rewarded. But danger does not equal truth. In fact, beliefs that rely on fear and social pressure usually lack strong evidence. Truth does not need protection. Myth does. Psychology explains religious belief far better than supernatural claims ever have. Applying one standard. Here is the key test. If Jesus were not a religious figure, if he were any other person, would historians accept this level of evidence? Absolutely not. And history does not get special rules for faith. When we remove faith and apply evidence, no contemporary records, no Roman documentation, no Jewish confirmation, forged passages, late anonymous texts. The conclusion is unavoidable. The historical Jesus collapses. This does not tell you what to believe. It asks you to think. If you value evidence over tradition and logic over assumption, you may find this channel useful. Logic Before Faith examines belief systems through history, psychology, and critical thinking, so viewers can reach their own conclusions.